One God made us all, Andals and Valyrians and First Men, but he did not make us all alike. He made the lion and the aurochs as well, both noble beasts, both certain gifts he gave one and not the other. And the lion cannot live as an auroch, nor an auroch as a lion. For you to bed your sister would be a grievous sin, sir, but you are not the blood of the dragon, no more than I am. What they do is what they have always done, and it is not for us to judge them. Alysanne on the Doctrine of Exceptionalism. Fire and Blood, a time of testing, the realm remade. In King's Landing, the long reign of King Jaehaerys Targaryen truly began in earnest, with his regency well and truly ended. The young king inherited a realm burdened with pressing troubles, both from his uncle Maegor and by his mother and hand during the regency. Two of these issues stood above the rest. The royal treasury lay empty, its debts mounting, and his so-called secret marriage to his sister Alysanne grew harder to conceal with every passing day, like a hidden danger waiting to ignite. Both matters demanded swift action. The crown's immediate need for coin was eased by Jaehaerys, the new master of coin, who turned to the great banks of Essos. By negotiating with the Iron Bank of Braavos, as well as lenders in Tyrosh and Myr, he secured 3 sizable loans, skillfully playing each bank against the other to gain the best terms. With gold once more flowing, work on the Dragon Pit resumed, and labourers returned in force to the Hill of Rhaenys. Yet, both Rhaego and the king understood the borrowed coin was no true solution. Loans might slow the loss, but they cannot mend the realm's broken finances. For that, new sources of revenue were needed. Jaehaerys rejected the heavy-handed measures of the past. He would not raise the port fees as Lord Celtigar had done, nor would he demand gold outright from his lords as Maegor had, knowing such burdens bred rebellion. Instead, he resolved upon a different course. The king chose to tax luxury. Goods desired by the wealthy and powerful would bear the burden. Silk and fine cloths, cloths of gold, cloths of silver, gemstone, Myrish lace and tapestries, Dornish wines and sand steeds, and the finely wrought arms and armours of the free cities. Spices would be taxed most heavily of all, from pepper and cloves to saffron and cinnamon, rare treasures from distant lands already dear in price. In this way the crown would draw wealth without provoking unrest. Jaehaerys himself joked the new levies fell most heavily upon the very goods that made him so rich in the first place. No man can claim these taxes oppress him, Jaehaerys told the small council. Any man who wishes to avoid them need only give up his pepper, his silks, his pearls, and he will not pay a single penny. Yet those who crave such things crave them greatly. How else are they able to display their wealth and power? They may grumble, but in the end they will pay. Nor did the levies on spice and silk stand alone. The king also introduced a new law concerning crenulations. Any lord who sought to build a new castle, or to strengthen and enlarge an old one, were required to pay dearly for that right. The measure, as Jaehaerys explained to Grand Maester Bennifer, served more than one purpose. Stronger walls could tempt a lord towards defiance, though lessons had been learned of Harren the Black should have been warning enough. Too many had forgotten it. This tax would both discourage needless fortifications and ensure those who persisted would fill the crown's coffers as they drained their own. Having done what he could to steady the crown's finances, Jaehaerys turned at last to the other great matter before him. He sent for his queen, Alysanne Targaryen, who departed Dragonstone at once upon Silverwing, after nearly half a year apart from her husband, while the rest of her household followed by ship. By then their marriage was scarcely a secret at all, known even to the poorest corners of King's Landing. Yet for the sake of appearances, king and queen kept apart for a moon's turn, while preparations were made for their second, formal, public wedding. This ceremony would be far more modest than the grand celebration that had marked the marriage of his mother to Lord Rhaegar Baratheon, which had drawn tens of thousands in celebration. Jaehaerys had no desire to spend coin. The crown could ill afford. Instead, a smaller gathering of 1,000 witnesses witnessed the union within the Red Keep. Beneath the Iron Throne, it was Septon Barth who joined Jaehaerys and Alysanne in marriage once again. Lord Rhaegar Baratheon and the Dowager Queen Alyssa stood among the witnesses to the ceremony, having returned from Storm's End with Rhaegar's brothers, Garren and Ronnell. Yet it was the arrival of another guest that stirred the greatest excitement. Rhaena Targaryen, the so-called Queen in the West, came as well, descending upon King's Landing on her dragon, Dreamfire, to see her siblings marry and to visit her daughter, Arya. When the rites were completed, bells rang across the city, and ravens were sent forth to carry news of the union to every corner of the realm. The second wedding differed from the first, in one notable way, for it was followed by the traditional bedding. Queen Alysanne would later say it was her wish, determined as she was to silence any doubts about the legitimacy of her marriage. Lord Rhaegar, deep in his cups by this time, led the revellers who carried the queen to the bridal chamber, with her companions performing the same office for the king. There, within Maegor's holdfast in the Red Keep, Jaehaerys and Alysanne sealed their marriage, binding their union before gods and men. With all secrecy ended, the king and his court watched closely to see how the realm would answer their union. Jaehaerys understood well why his brother Aegon's marriage had stirred such violent opposition. Their uncle Maegor's defiance in taking a second wife had already strained relations with the faith, and Aegon's own marriage had been seen yet as another provocation. The High Septon's condemnation had ignited unrest across the realm, drawing in the swords and stars and many devout lords. Aegon and Rhaena, little known to the small folk and travelling without dragons, had been left exposed to the hostile crowds, particularly in the Riverlands. No such conditions surrounded Jaehaerys and Alysanne. The Starry Sept offered no challenge, though some among the faith still disliked the custom of sibling marriage. The current High Septon was cautious and unwilling to provoke the crown. The militant order of the faith had been broken, their remnants scattered or sent to the wall. Nor would Jaehaerys repeat his brother's mistakes. He and his queen intended to journey across the realm, to see their lands and people with their own eyes, to meet their lords and hear the concerns of the small folk. This time, however, wherever they went, they would go with dragons. For all these reasons, Jaehaerys believed the realm would accept his marriage, yet he was not a man to leave such matters up to sheer chance. Words are wind, he told his council, but wind can fan a fire. My father and my uncle answered words with steel and flame. We will answer words with words and quench the fire before it can take hold. Instead of sending soldiers, the king sent out voices. Preachers were dispatched across the realm with a simple charge to speak of Queen Alysanne's kindness, her gentle nature, and her care for all the peoples of the Seven Kingdoms, high and low alike. 7 were chosen for this task, 3 men and 4 women. They carried no weapons but their tongues, their courage and their wits. In time, tales of their journey would grow into legend, embellished as such stories often are. Of the 7, only one was widely known when they set out, Queen Eleanor of House Costain, who was once one of the Black Brides, the one who had found Maegor dead upon the Iron Throne, clad in garments that grew more worn with each passing mile. Eleanor travelled the Reach, speaking eloquently of Maegor's cruelty and the promise of the new king and queen. In later years, she would renounce her rank entirely, joining the faith and becoming Mother Eleanor at the Great Mother House in Lannisport. In time, the other 6 chosen to speak for the king would become nearly as renowned as Queen Eleanor herself. There were Septons Baldric, known for his cunning, Rollo, famed for his learning, and old Athlin, fierce of spirit despite the loss of his legs, carried from place to place in a litter. The women proved no less remarkable. Septa Jezebel had been won to the queen's cause during her service on Dragonstone. Septon Volatane, small in stature, was celebrated as a healer, with many claiming she worked miracles wherever she went. From the Vale came Mother Maris, who had spent her years guiding orphan girls at a mother house in Goldtown's harbour. As these 7 travelled the realm, they spoke tirelessly of Queen Alysanne, praising her piety, her generosity, and her devotion to her king, her brother. When challenged by septons, begging brothers or devout lords quoting from the seven-pointed star, or the teachings of the past high septons, they were not left without rebuke. The king himself had prepared this response, with the guidance of Septon Oswic, and especially Septon Barth. In later years, this reasoning would come to be known as the Doctrine of Exceptionalism, accepted by both the Citadel and the Starry Sept alike. The doctrine the king's envoys carried was simple at its core, though bold in its claim. Faith of the Seven, born in ancient Andalos and carried west by the Andals, forbade unions between close kin, declaring acts as sinful and the offspring accursed. The exceptionalists did not deny these teachings, but set forth one crucial distinction. The Targaryens, they argued, were not as other men. Their origins lay not in Andalos, but old Valyria, a land with its own customs and laws. Their very appearance marked them as different, with their pale hair and striking eyes and commanding presence. More than that, they alone had mastered dragons, creatures no other people could tame since the Doom. These differences, the speakers claimed, set them apart in the eyes of God and men alike. Septon Alysanne often gave voice to this belief. From his litter, he would tell those who challenged him that though one God had made all peoples, he had not made them the same. Just as different beasts were given different natures, so too were the Targaryens set apart, and what was forbidden to others need not apply to them. One story tells of Septon Baldric being confronted by a rough hedge knight who mocked the doctrine, and asked if he too might take a sister to wife. The Septon answered with a smile, saying the man need only to go to Dragonstone and claim a dragon first. If he could do that, Baldric said he would gladly perform the marriage himself. Such questions are the burden of every student of history. Looking back, it's easy enough to name the cause of events that came to pass. For those that did not, we are left with only conjecture. The realm did not rise against King Jaehaerys and Queen Alysanne in 51 AC, as it had against Aegon the Uncrowned and Rhaena a decade before. Yet the reasons for this are less certain. The silence of the High Septon surely played a part, and the people of the realm, high and low alike, had grown weary of bloodshed. Still, if words hold any power, then the efforts of the seven speakers must also be counted among the cause. Though the king found happiness in his queen, and the realm seemed content with their union, Jaehaerys had not been mistaken in foreseeing trials ahead. With his council restored, Lord Rogar reconciled, and the crown's finances set upon firmer footing, a new challenge arose before him, one that would prove more difficult than any yet faced: his sister, Rhaena.